Hey, hello, and welcome to the live stream of consciousness. My name is Michael Zinn. Uh, I have made it, thankfully, so we can do this thing. You have made it, thankfully, so we can do this thing. As always, I appreciate everybody who comes here and shares their existence and their moment with me. I got a bunch of people out there. Hello, Janice. Hello, Stephanie. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness. We got Timmy out there. We got Jilly. We got Ninja Kitty. What's up, folks? Good to see you. As you know, this is my happy place, especially today. It has been a long, long day at work, and I am now home. I'm in my own place. I'm in my own intention. The live stream of consciousness is my place to share a space with another human being that I am curious about and I want to share with you. And we have a conversation. We talk a little bit about consciousness and a lot about that person. And we learn some stuff and we share some love, and it's all a lot of fun. So let's get this party started. Again, thank you guys for being here. Stephanie, I see you're new, so welcome. If you are on YouTube, which it looks like you are, and you subscribe, I have a bell that I ring for people who are new and subscribe. So let me know if you subscribed, and I will ring that bell for you. Kind of cool. So today's guest is an amazing artist and human being that I've met in the past couple of years. And had the fortune to kind of work with, not directly, but helping him do some video for some shows that he was doing. And the art that he does is quite unique. It's very interesting. We got Tim saying hola to Stephanie. What's up, Stephanie? From Tim. Tim is in Brazil, so he always says hola with the O, because it's I think it's Portuguese. Anyway. Stephanie says she subscribed, so we get to ring the bell. Look at that. Before we even get going, I interrupted my intro. Thank you for subscribing, Stephanie. I don't know why I decided to do that. My friend Jill bought me the bell, and now we ring it when people subscribe. So my next guest is a very, very interesting artist. The art that he does is he uses cadavers. Now that might sound a little strange, but it's not human cadavers. He's a bug taxidermist, which is a very, very interesting art form and beautiful, beautiful art form. There's nothing like nature as art, and to express nature as art is always something I find really fascinating as an artist. So we will talk all about that to my next guest, and his name is Adam. I'm going to welcome him to the show. I'm going to say welcome, Adam, to the show, and I'm saying specifically, hello. I'm saying specifically Adam because I realized, even though I do say your name to myself, your last name to myself all the time, I've never actually asked you how to pronounce it. So I've been saying Inzalaco to myself, but then I read it and I was like, no, it's probably Inzalaco. So
you actually had it right the first time.
Oh, really? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, you got it.
So Adam Inzalaco, welcome to the show. What's the origin of that last name?
I believe it's severely Italian. It's from my dad's side, obviously.
Severely Italian. Nice.
Yeah, the family tree is like crazy.
Nice. That's like a true Italian name. Cool. Well, welcome to the live stream of consciousness. Thank you so much for coming. I want to share so much about what you do and pictures and stories and videos that I have. But before we do that, we got to take care of the consciousness business.
Sure.
And that is the question that I ask all my guests and add it to the culminative answer that's been growing since I started this. And that question is, what is consciousness? What is consciousness to you, Adam?
It's a loaded question. I think it's a lot to do with what it means for you to be present.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's sort of a fleeting thing. I think that can vary a lot. Mostly depending on what is important to you, right? Because you could be sort of present in something that really engages you, but once you come across something that is not engaging to you, that sort of consciousness can sort of fleet a little bit.
Wow. Yeah, interesting.
Oh God, that's just got such a rabbit hole of a question. I can go in so many
You
different
know,
directions.
it really is. It really is. And you
Yeah.
have definitely met the requirements, at least, that it doesn't have to be a long, elaborative answer. But I love it because everybody answers the question differently, but it's all the same stuff, right? That they're talking about. And
Right.
you just brought up a point that I hadn't heard yet, which is kind of like the level of consciousness that exists at a given moment based on the experience and based on the circumstances, which is actually valid. That makes a lot of sense. I certainly understand the idea of not being as present in a moment that is not as engaging to me. You kind of
For sure.
you kind of, I don't want to say you check out, but you go check out other places in your mind, you know what I mean? Or which is really, really cool, really interesting answer. And the whole idea of just your ability to be present is really, that's kind of the meat of the answer. But the level of the presence is very cool. So I love it. Awesome. As I was saying to you earlier, we have not really gotten into, I mean, we've talked about art and a little bit about life, but we've not gotten into any deep spiritual discussions. So I don't really know what your beliefs are spiritually, whether they're theologically based or metaphysically based. I think here, I talk a lot about energy as kind of the source of everything. So it's not as theological of a definition as a metaphysical definition of what reality is. But do you have or even do you believe, because we haven't had this discussion, do you believe that reality and existence is not quite what we've been told, like there's something more to it? I'm kind of setting you up a little bit, but
I am very much a firm believer that, we definitely don't have everything quite figured out. I think that anyone who thinks they have it figured out, no matter what your belief system is, like, it just seems very extreme for me for one belief system to completely shut out another because they think they have it right. And I also think that's just sort of inappropriate on a whole bunch of different levels. Because who's to say one person is correct when another person isn't? And then you can obviously get into the whole historical side of different theologies and belief systems and how they've like traveled the globe and what the sort of agenda for those, missionaries to push their belief systems on others. I mean, personally, I've always been a really big science mind. So as far as anything more on the religious side of things, I just never really subscribed to it. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really fascinating.
Sure.
But as far as existence and the way that reality is, I can't help but feel that there is certainly a scientific sort of explanation and logical progression based on evidence on how things have become to be.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm not really sure how that sets me up for the real question that I usually ask, and I kind of prefaced it because we haven't had to talk about spirituality and what those beliefs are. But the real question I usually ask is if there's a moment that you have, a story that you can tell, or is it something maybe that you had from birth when you made the realization that everything wasn't quite what you've been taught in school, and the systems that we are raised under may not tell us the whole story. So and I'm talking about in regards to things like other dimensions and ghosts and spirits and things like that. So is there a story that you have that kind of defines when you started to realize that
For
there's more
sure.
to it?
Growing up, I was super duper sensitive to paranormal occurrences, like to the point where it was overwhelming and I couldn't shut it out. Um, there were a couple of places that I had lived growing up. One in particular that really stands out, where there would be things that you would see and really couldn't explain on a daily basis.
Mhm.
Whether it was like shadow figures or just feelings and presences that were just super, like I said, overwhelming. It had gotten to the point where it was almost like nonstop, and I one day I just stopped. I didn't really experience it anymore, and I had spoken to a psychic about it, and she was like, "Well, what you probably did was you completely tuned out because you couldn't quite handle it."
Mhm.
And I've thought about that a lot because I still really don't experience nearly as much as I used to.
Mhm.
Um, the super interesting thing about that statement, though, is that my most previous birthday, my girlfriend bought me a tarot reading session at an apothecary shop in Amityville, and
Cool.
right away the psychic was just like, you have a bit of a gift. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you used to see stuff a lot, didn't you? And I was like, how do you know? Um, but she tapped into it right away, and she's like, you need to get ready because you're probably going to start experiencing things again kind of soon, and you're going to have a bit of a spiritual awakening, whatever that means
Mhm.
for you.
Right. Right.
um,
Right.
I haven't really quite experienced it yet. I've had a little bit of tricklings of some occurrences, but I don't know if that's sort of me experiencing some sort of like wishful thinking or tricking myself into believing it. But I kind of like missed that ability to tune into it
Mhm.
because it was just as scary as it was also very unique.
Mhm.
Um, if I had the ability to tap into it and sort of control it, I think that would sort of, snap me back into that entire ideology of a question that you had just asked.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm certainly a believer in some of that stuff for sure, just from my own personal experiences.
Sure.
Um, but it's just so personal. I think that it's hard to categorize it past anything that a personal experience, if that makes any sense.
Sure. No, no, that does make that makes sense, and I appreciate you sharing even just a little bit. Saying, letting us know that you have experienced in it and that you do believe in it. I mean, I think it's not uncommon these days. I think there's a lot of different belief systems out there, and I think um, the best belief system, or one of the best belief systems, is being able to accept the idea that there are other belief systems, right? And that who are you, like you said earlier, who are you to decide what is right and what is wrong and
Mhm.
what's real and what's not? What's real for you may not be real for someone else. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. Or so um yeah, that's interesting answer. I appreciate it. Like I said, I appreciate you sharing it. I don't want to dig too deep into that. But that's a lot of, again, the live stream of consciousness for me started just out of the love of these conversations, of hearing the different experiences and kind of comparing them to experiences that I've had, and my own belief systems, and sometimes integrating them, and sometimes saying, well, that doesn't fit with my idea system. I haven't experienced it, so it's not part of my reality. um,
Mhm.
but I think, again, part of the idea of these conversations is to open people up. I think that the psychic that you saw, probably, I think, um, again, in my belief system, I think that we all are able to tap into that at some level. And I think, it's our own fears maybe when we're younger and not understanding it, and it's also, I think, society, I think, is a big part of that, the big control system in play. I don't think they want us even realizing what powers might be inside. But when I say the word they in that context, I start realizing I'm going in the different direction of this show. It's not a conspiracy theory show or anything like that.
For
um
sure.
but um But so before I get into you and what you do and sharing all of your wonderfulness, um, what are your thoughts about when I, you told me what you thought consciousness was. What are your thoughts about collective consciousness, the idea of a collective consciousness, that we are all somehow connected in on that level of consciousness?
I think the idea of a collective consciousness is super fascinating. If it was something that was fully realized, I think that it's something that would scare the hell out of most people. I don't know if most people would be able to really be prepared for that level of connectedness. It's just also sort of hard to believe in just because of how much tension there is in the world, seemingly almost at every waking moment, especially with a lot of current events going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that if there was a common understanding and a collective consciousness, that people would sort of get each other a little bit more. Because people can be pretty brutal. And I think if more people understood that not everyone has it the same way, not everybody experiences the same things, that sort of really intense sort of neglect for people's well-beings or understandings or personal experiences would sort of lessen a little bit. I think people would have a little bit more compassion if there was a common understanding.
Yeah, you know what, and that makes sense, and I again, that's why I like to have these conversations. Like, okay, if there's a collective consciousness, then explain the division, that we're experiencing right now, and it certainly seems that in this time, I've been experiencing a lot of emotional people kind of operating on an emotional level and almost. On this, not, I don't want to say paranoid or maybe defensive, but on this level of like waiting for somebody to attack their beliefs, or not attack necessarily, but somehow oppose, you know what I mean, and people like waiting to get offended almost. And I think my belief, and what I believe about the idea of the collective consciousness is that, if we are able to celebrate each other's differences rather than fight about each other's differences, then I think humanity has a much better chance of, making it these days. You know what I mean? It's a challenge these days, but I think
Absolutely.
for me, I think that that's why we're at this place. I think that it's specifically happening this way to bring that awareness to people, kind of, separate the people who are, going to live in fear, and the people who are going to live in love. That's kind of it for me. But again, I don't want to get too much into my beliefs. I want to give you some space here. Jilly is saying a frequency match, perhaps, and I believe she's talking about your past experiences and ability to connect and not. She's asking if you've meditated to try to get it back. Do you meditate at all?
I've tried. I have such a hard time. I'm such a scatterbrain. My mind is going all the time, and it's never quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I do sort of consider a lot of my hobbies and passions to be meditative kind of, practices, but I've never
Absolutely.
really been able to really tune into something, especially something that is as deep as sort of like the inner workings of everything that we had discussed.
Right.
I feel like as I get older, I'll have a bit of an easier time getting to that because it's not quite as intense for me all the time anymore. I would like to try again soon, though. I think that it would be a good idea to give it another shot. It's been a while since I've tried.
Cool. And on that note, I would actually love to respond to that and kind of make a suggestion. I have meditated successfully. I hear that often, when I talk about meditation to people, oh, my brain is just going, I can't really quiet it down. And I'm going to ask you to change your perspective for a moment. Okay. So when people talk about meditation, they talk about mindfulness, right? And I think meditation, I think that immediately people think meditation is about quieting down your mind, stopping all of those thoughts and being able to sit in the silence. However, this has worked for me. And I think it is partially, or at least that's what it feels like. But there's another aspect to it, and that is the aspect of awareness. Okay. And when I say that, what I mean is instead of quieting down all of those thoughts that are happening, it's almost the opportunity to be aware of all of those thoughts that are happening, and being like, okay, I know this thought's happening. I don't have to address it and jump into it and explore that thought right now, but I know it's there, and I know that thought's there, and I know that thought's there, and you know what? I can hear a car outside. I also know that's there, and you know what? There's a little bit of I smell a candle, and you know what? I hear this meditation music playing. Like, so meditation is almost being hyper aware of everything and just kind of letting it be and sitting with it and just kind of not having to necessarily address it. So maybe that's something that you might want to try, or at least think about the next time you're going to attempt meditating. I don't know if anybody out there in the audience has anything to say about that, but I think for me, when I hear people saying I can't quiet down my mind, that would be my immediate suggestion, because when I've been in guided meditations, that's kind of been the guide has been like, okay, you know, smell. They put essential oils on your wrist so you can smell, you know, the lavender or the what's it called, frankincense, or some of these beautiful scents, and it's just so you're kind of allowing all of these stimulations to hit your brain at the same time and be in that moment, like truly be in that moment, like completely. And anyway, that was my response to your meditation thing. And I do have some quotes, comments here. Tim is saying you can't be aware or part of a collective consciousness and you first reach consciousness in yourself, and I believe that is definitely true. Once you start to understand yourself, you can put yourself into that bigger collective picture. I think I say the same thing about self-love. You know, you can't really know loving somebody else until you know loving yourself. But I'm jumping way ahead of myself in my philosophies here. And Jilly is suggesting to watch the thoughts sail by like clouds drifting in the sky. So again, like you're aware they're there, but you're just kind of like you're just observing them and letting them kind of float by. So that's great. So let's shift gears a little bit here. And as I was doing this today and talking, I was like, maybe I should reverse the show, because I start the show by asking these deep questions to this person who I know, but my audience doesn't know, and then I share all about this person with my audience. Maybe I should think about switching that up, but I want to share all about you. So I introduced you. I said you were a bug taxidermist. Would you say that's accurate? Would you say that's
Yeah, totally. It's definitely a huge aspect of a lot of the things that I do. You know, it's very funny too because like I and I don't mean this in any sort of like negative connotation, but I feel like through the intensity of which I have pursued this sort of art form, I've sort of typecasted myself into being the bug guy. Um, but you know, fortunately, it does extend quite a bit past that. You know, I do come from a sculpture background. Um, I do a lot of drawing as well, and I do sort of pull different pleasures out of each of these different mediums that I will usually keep in my rotation. Um, but as far as the bug taxidermy goes, it is probably the one that I put the most time and thought and like mental energy and stuff into.
Yeah, you know what I feel like, and from when I met you, you know, I felt like there was a definite authentic connection between you and your art, you know, and the art that was being presented at the time was a lot of this bug stuff that I'm going to share with us. But again, there's such a authentic connection, and when you talk about it, and I've had the pleasure to actually see you working on it, you know, you can feel it. You know what I mean? There's an energetic existence to it all. So I'm going to share my browser window here, and we're going to look at a couple of your pieces. And I would love for you to talk about the piece, the specimen, any feelings that come through specifically for that piece, or memories.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a blue morpho. Scientific name is Morphoditis. They're a Brazilian species. They're found throughout other parts of South America. They're actually not actually blue. They appear blue to us because it's how our eyes and brains sort of take in the light. However, their wing scales present true iridescence. The way that light is captured, stored, and refracted just happens to appear blue, but there's no pigmentation in those wings.
Wow.
So the blue is sort of an illusion, which I think is really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
In this frame in particular. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you see this in person, you talked about the iridescence. You know, when you move around the light, you can see the different colors within the blue.
Exactly. Yeah. It'll shift. The hues will change. The values will sort of differ and waver. It also appears a little bit different depending on the environment, which is really interesting. I think that's a really nice idea when somebody finds a very personal connection to this sort of thing. Butterflies in particular, people really feel a huge connection to. So a frame like this, for example, I could tell you a story about when I was set up at, it was kind of like an art and culture pop-up, and somebody came by my table and she saw a blue butterfly. It wasn't quite this one. And she's like, oh, my family, like, you know, they're from where these butterflies are from.
Wow.
I just lost a relative recently, and I would really like to get one of these in their honor. But the butterfly I had wasn't the right one that she was talking about. This is the one that she meant. But the one that I had was actually, I think, a North American species. And I was like, I will happily put one together for you, because I could see this really means a lot to you. And she burst into tears, and it was a very like emotional situation. And for my art to kind of get that out of somebody is really powerful. It's definitely nothing I would have expected when I started this hobby. I think about it a lot when I revisit the species, and I work a lot of them. They're pretty popular. So, you know, as I work one, it's a mainstay sort of in my portfolio. And that exact story just kind of like replays in my head every single time that I work one of these.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because I have a similar experience with you. I commissioned a piece from you, and it was very specific, and I felt immediately everything you're saying. Like, not only is there a connection to you and this creature and the art that you're creating out of it, but there's a connection to the person that you're creating it for, oftentimes when it's a commission, which again, just energetically, I can sense in you. You know what I mean? I can sense how much that meant to you, and how much more that kind of excited you about doing the piece. You know what I mean? And you were just like, you know, it's really great. I really commend you on that, because I could tell that you were honored, you know, just even to be asked to do it. But you were asked to do it because it's what you do. You know what I mean? And it was like, so it's like this interesting kind of circular thing, you know, which is great. So bravo for really like putting yourself into this position where, you know, people are going to approach you with their vulnerability, and allow you to kind of connect with them as a collective consciousness, right? You're going to connect to that person on that
Full circle
level.
right there.
Yeah, on that level, you know, totally. Awesome. Let's take a look. I don't know why my phone keeps going off, but let's take a look. So I jumped ahead. I think I wanted to go through some of the single pieces. I know you got more into these multiple pieces. We'll go back to those. But here's a bit of a different one. Let's hear a story about this piece.
So I grew up severely arachnophobic, like deathly afraid of spiders. Couldn't even like exist in the same room as one. If I saw a picture of one, I'd freak out, like big time. I probably should have been in some sort of counseling for it when I was younger, because it was so intense. Fortunately, it's gotten much better. working one of these was sort of a challenge that I had set on myself. I was like, I've been doing this hobby for a while. I could handle just about every other bug. What makes a spider so different? And I still don't really have the answer to that question. I'm still trying to figure it out, but they don't scare me anymore. And this was one of the first ones that sort of set me on that path.
Right.
Tarantulas are still a little bit intimidating, but I thought a spider would be a really good stepping stone because they're not quite as intense. But that spider that we're looking at is massive. It's another South American species. They are the largest true spider in existence.
Wow.
It's called a golden silk orb weaver. That specimen, I think it was about. I have a ruler. I need some reference really quick. Honestly, from top to bottom, it was probably close to 6 or 7 inches from leg to leg. And the way that this is pinned, it's actually a bit smaller than it really is when it's completely spread out. There's a lot of dimension to this articulation, so it sort of scrunches everything up a little bit, but it's huge. When I finished this piece, I was like, this was such a rewarding exercise because look at what I now have created. It's sort of a different perspective on that phobia that I used to have now, where what was once like inconsolable terror is now this appreciation for form in this living creature, and is actually kind of beautiful if you look at it in a different way.
It truly is beautiful in its symmetry, and there's so many aspects to it artistically, but it also I still feel like it does have that kind of, I don't know what the right word is. It's a powerful image. I don't want to say menacing, but it's certainly, again, I'm not.
They're
really
intense.
Sure.
They're really intense.
It's a really powerful image. I mean, it really is. It's amazing. Tim, who is in Brazil, said he saw one of those butterflies in Sao Paulo a few days ago when he was taking his son Taryn for a walk. That's pretty cool.
I can't even imagine if I just saw those out like regularly outside, I'd be thrilled.
I can't imagine that either. Amazing. So this is beautiful. Again, a beautiful piece. Is this piece still available, or is this gone?
This was a commission. I do revisit certain compositions if something like this is really like if it stands out to me enough and it's something that I feel strongly enough about, I'll sort of like add this formula to my lineup. So if I'm like preparing for a show, or if I have one of these specimens on hand, I'll put a little bit of a spin on it so it still is a bit fresh. But this is something that I'll probably get to again at some point.
Awesome. Beautiful. I love this piece. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. And this is a little bit of a delve into photography as well as the taxidermy. So we'll talk about this one.
Yeah, this was one of my first jumps into a multi-specimen display. After doing this for so many years, I had kind of grown, not quite bored, but the challenge was gone when it came to making a single specimen piece. And I really like to learn new things. That's basically how all this pinning stuff started. I was curious. I wanted to try my hand at it. And it sort of just snowballed into what it is. And after doing things over and over again, this sort of muscle memory kicks in, and there's no more thinking that really goes into it. So it was like, okay, I think I need to challenge myself a little bit and keep things a little bit fresh. Why don't we do more than one piece in a frame? And originally, this piece was super different. I think it was about 6 or 7 of these beetles of all different colors on one canvas, essentially. And it was just super busy. And I had put it together. I posted it on social media, and I was like, feedback, please, because I don't really know what I think of this. And it was the first time I got like negative feedback.
Oh, wow.
But like, I'm totally okay with constructive criticism. So I was like actually pretty thrilled to get resistance. There's always a little bit of like a pang of anxiety when you get your first negative critique, because you're like, oh no, this thing that I was sort of like validated in for so long has just been changed. It's challenged. But when that challenge is intentional, when you're putting yourself up to the, the plate and you're kind of giving yourself that fight, it would be an injustice to yourself to not take the criticism, because then what's going to happen? You're just going to do the same thing over and over again.
Wow.
That'll lead into something that I want to touch to at some point, but I'll keep talking about this piece. So after I put this together, I had to completely disassemble it, because I agreed that in the end, it just was not a successful composition with all these 7 beetles on one piece. And I was like, I need to stop overthinking it. I'm going too deep into what I think this should be. And this actually set me on a path where I wanted the specimens to inform the piece more so than me making the decisions. As an artist, your art is a decision, and you're always choosing how to put your piece together. But when you let the aspects of your work inform the process, it comes together so much more organically. I think it comes through much more genuine, and I always think it comes through a lot more successfully and a lot more strong. And that's where this piece came through. I remember the 2 people who gave me the criticism were my employer, she is a designer, and then my girlfriend, who doesn't hold any punches. She'll just tell you like it is. And I respect that so much. I think that is incredibly important to have people like that around, because that's how growth happens, and if you don't have, if you're surrounded by a bunch of like yes people, you're going to get so caught up in your own trip, and then it's just kind of icky, for lack of a better term. It's kind of gross. And this piece is totally representative of that. So instead of looking at numbers and forcing things to fit, I started looking at colors. I started looking at shapes. I started looking at which pieces speak to each other and what just works. And this is what came through. So as you can see, there's 3, these are called frog-leg beetles. They have these really beautiful metallic exoskeletons, and their colors are super duper vast and varied. No 2 are alike. They will be similar, but they'll always be unique, and there will always be differences present. And in this particular frame, from top to bottom, it goes the greenest with a little bit of blue, one that is a mix of green and blue, and then one that is just like completely blue. So it is sort of representative of this nice gradation of color. And then I have this sort of like warm copper embellishment to help accent those colors. So it's a little bit of color theory coming into play. And then, like you had mentioned, the photography aspect. I don't know if I consider myself a photographer. I like taking pictures, but I think that photography is it's a beautiful art form that is way more involved than more people think. I can't really take much more credit than using my cell phone to get a good angle and playing with depth of field in this. But I appreciate that for sure.
Well, I think those are important factors in composing an image. You know what I mean? This isn't just a shot of I got to just document the piece. You know what I mean? This is an artistic interpretation of the piece itself. Which, again, it doesn't matter that it was an iPhone. I mean, it's the angle that you picked. It's the idea of the depth of field, for sure. All of that stuff. So Julie's got a good question. I want to remember my question about the bugs and the metallic specifically, but her question is, where do you get the specimens? I would love for you to talk a little bit about that, because that's a great question.
Yeah. So specimen procurement is always one of the most puzzling things to people. A lot of the specimens I work with are tropical. They're from outside of the US typically. The way this works, and this is going to sound not ideal, but I'll explain why it's considered ethical as a process for procuring these. A lot of these specimens are farmed. They are raised for the purpose of scientific study, for artwork, for people to utilize in whatever project they have going on. A lot of people sort of get upset when they hear that they're farmed. However, what this does is it allows for these things to be distributed without affecting any sort of natural populations. So it doesn't really affect any sort of ecological harmony. Fortunately, if that were the case, I'm sure a lot of the populations would be completely devastated at this point, and that idea is scary, when it comes to just like thinking of the planet, or even, from a more selfish standpoint, the hobby that I do. But more specifically, these essentially farms, they will raise the specimens, they'll grow them fully, and then they do euthanize them, unfortunately. But what that does is it keeps them in really good shape for the use of these sort of applications. And then they'll distribute them however they seem necessary, whether you're buying directly from them or from a third-party website that buys them and you get from them. I typically get a lot of my stuff in bulk, so I'll get directly from the source. It's not a super romantic answer, but I will say that there are times where I come across something that has died naturally around here. And those frames always hit a little bit different because it feels, the goal with all of these is to sort of honor the creatures that I work with and to really pay homage to their beauty and their role in the ecosystems on the planet and stuff. And but when I get to work with something that's so close to home, it's a little bit more personal because, this thing did go through a full life, and, otherwise it would just completely disintegrate. It would return to the earth. It would, it would be recycled, by natural means. But being able to sort of create a frame that presents a mood, or like we had talked about earlier, can sort of impact someone and mean something to them deeply. It's working with the things that I get kind of naturally are honestly the most ideal, but it's just very hard to do.
Right. And it seems like, I think we had a discussion about this, but the farm process, these things live a good, healthy life, right? They get treated well, they eat well,
Yeah.
they get fed and all of that stuff. So my question, looking at this piece in particular, is I'm imagining that you learn a lot of stuff with each different piece and specimen that you work with, because for me, I would almost look at this and think, wow, these were treated somehow to look metallic. I wouldn't think off the bat that they were natural until I got to know you and I got to know your work and this kind of work in general. That's really that's the beauty of this work. It's here to show like the wonders of the world that are beautifully artistic already. But tell me what you learned about this. I'm imagining you learned about like what's the reason that this bug has this appearance and this kind of exoskeleton. Is there anything specific about it? Like,
so in most cases, really bright colors means stay away. You'll see that a lot, obviously, in like snakes. You'll see that a lot in different reptiles, but invertebrates are certainly no exception to that rule. A lot of the times, these bright pigmentations sort of indicate that there is a toxin that exists in them, that if they are eaten, the thing that preys upon them will get sick. A lot of these animals don't have super good defense mechanisms, so those bright warning colors are typically the only thing they have to keep them from becoming a meal, for example. Most notably, it's not obviously one of these, but a monarch butterfly. A lot of people know what a monarch is. They're poisonous. If anything eats them, they will get sick. And, but we see it and we're like, oh, wow, pretty, super bright colors. It's gorgeous. But in nature, that means like stay away.
right.
When it comes to these metallic colorations, a lot of the times, believe it or not, it's camouflage. Which you wouldn't expect. But based on the colors that are existing in their natural surroundings, whether it be like any sort of tropical foliage or, just the way that the landscape is constructed around the things where these creatures grow up, you'd have a very hard time finding one of these in nature, believe it or not. You could even just experience this in your backyard. Take a minute to go outside and look to see what you can find. And at first glance, you're going to be like, there's nothing here. But you really sort of like dial in and you're like, oh, well, there's way more here than I expected. That's crazy. But this metallic coloration is super duper interesting. When it comes to learning about it, the science behind it, there's actually very, very fine cone-shaped parts to their anatomy, and they are fractals. These really super intricate, like microscopic constructions in their exoskeleton just happens to throw light in a very strange manner. And it presents itself with these really, really fascinating bright colors. You'll experience this on like beetles, dragonflies, for example. I think some of them can have some iridescent coloration. But it's, even someone like me who's been doing it for so long, like I'll work a specimen like this and I'm still just like completely awestruck that like this is a thing that exists in nature. This happens normally.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, totally fascinating. I just saw a question. I don't know if he's still here, but Jesse Howell, this was back when we were talking about you I guess you didn't feel so connected, and Jesse has his own show called The Missing Link, and he talks about some metaphysical stuff too and conspiracy theory stuff. He's a great host, but he's asking, when do you feel most connected? I do want to give him a little props, so I just saw that pop up.
Most connected, usually when I'm in nature. If I'm just outside walking around on a hiking trail, that's when I feel like most of that sort of brain fog is just completely dissipated. I feel most grounded. Also, the further east I go on Long Island, much in my younger life, I grew up out in Hampton Bays. And for some reason, when I'm out there, it just feels so much like home.
Yeah.
I've moved around a lot. I've moved, like almost every 2 years for as long as I can remember. But when I'm out east, when I'm back in Hampton Bays, if I'm out that way, East Quogue is another really nice spot. I find that is when I feel the most grounded and connected and sort of present.
At peace. Cool. That's great. Thank you for answering that. We have another comment from a Zach Curtin saying, I think I went to high school with this guy. You recognize that?
You did go to high school with this guy.
Welcome, Zach. Welcome to the live stream. Thank you for being here. Awesome. Thanks for bringing some of your crew here, Adam. I appreciate that. Let's move forward and let's take a look at this one. Another great one.
So this is a really great example of a specimen that I found. I actually raised this specimen from a baby.
Wow.
Yeah, so Chinese mantis, they are invasive. If you find them around here, they're not actually from here, but they make incredible pets and they're a ton of fun. They go through a handful of different molt cycles as they grow. And I had this one when it was like itty bitty, about this big.
Wow.
And just being able to sort of preserve it and prolong its life one way or another in a piece of art is sort of really gratifying, being able to raise it. And they're not easy to raise, but to sort of have that journey end, but then also really not quite end because it's something that now somebody has and they can enjoy on a daily basis. So cool. Adds a whole other dimension to appreciating these animals.
Yeah. That's so cool. And how long did you spend with this guy?
About a year. They have very, very short lifespans. In nature, they'll be around for about 12 months. In captivity, about 18 if you're lucky. This one was a male, super good eater. I remember it really, really specifically. But But yeah, it was super fun. I've been keeping mantises for such a long time. This was one of the last ones that I had kept. But being able to preserve it and frame it is it's so hard to find the right word to convey the feeling. It just feels like there's a little bit of purpose to what I do when there's an ability to sort of create something really beautiful out of this creature that I've raised. Even it was going to show up on camera so well. I had my first experience raising a beetle recently.
Oh wow, you raised that guy.
So this I had received when it was a larva. Beetles go through a full metamorphosis. They start off as eggs, they go into a larval state. After a larva, they pupate, and then they become a beetle. This species in particular was just recently deregulated in the US, meaning that it's legal to trade should it have been bred in the US, which this one was. And I had gotten 2 larvae. One didn't make it. This one did, though. It's still pinned because I haven't framed it yet. I plan on doing a whole film kind of project around it and a narration of the sort of framing process where I can delve into this whole thing a little bit more. But it's just another example of me having been able to experience this creature when it was alive. Because most of the times I'm getting these specimens dried, it feels a little bit more connected, to return to that word, when I'm working with something that I got to see live and thrive, and I fed it, interacted with it. And that mantis piece definitely fits into that category as well.
That's so cool. So here's an odd question. Do you name these guys? Does that guy have a name?
I would. I'm so bad at naming things. I'm terrible at naming things. And it's not like that whole, like, well, if I name it, I'll get attached. It's a bug. I won't hold it, it's a bug.
Does that pronoun? Like, how did you refer to the bug? Like, is that pronouns or like?
The mantis, the beetle.
Gotcha.
I mean, the beetle had, like, I'll give them nicknames, but I wouldn't really take it super seriously. In nature, those beetles can get up to a quarter pound, so I was just like, I would refer to it as cheeseburger because quarter pound. But the mantis was just, it's a mantis.
Right. That's cool. So I want to just there's so many more I want to share. I still want to go through a couple of these. We still have some time, but before I forget, I do want to share some of these videos because I think they're beautiful. This is not one that I made. I'm going to show one I didn't make and one I made when I was working with you. But this is the latest video that I've seen from you. You probably have more on your social media, but we haven't even really talked about your collaboration with Naipo and Popo, our mutual friend. So I guess we could kind of, I'll give a brief intro to that. We have a mutual friend, Zhang Po, who is a tattoo artist here on Long Island, internationally known, originally from China. Such an amazing person. I worked with him at World Famous Tattoo Inc. and we developed a friendship, and so we still work together. And that's where I met Adam at his shop in Bayshore, the World Famous Tattoo Art Gallery. But Popo has inspired Adam, or was inspired by Adam. I guess they inspired each other to work together and collaborate. And so I'm not sure. I'm imagining the collaboration really on the second one here, the Steam Bug, which we're about to look at, was more conceptual. Like he came up, you did the actual physical work, right? And he came up with the concept of it. Something that it's very interesting. I hadn't seen you do it with a bug before, and really was an amazing piece. Did you want to say something before I show the video?
Yeah, I can explain afterward. This way people know what we're talking about.
Okay, so enjoy this piece. It's about a minute long, and here we go. This is called Steam Bug. So actually, that I thought that it had the actual steam bug part in it. Was that the bug that you used for steam bug? Okay, I'm
So
gonna.
that bug, we were intended to use that bug. However, we did run out of time for preparing that specimen. So fortunately, I just framed that one normally as is. Um, he intended to sort of open it up and then do the whole gear arrangement like he had done on a couple of other pieces which you had seen,
Mhm.
but that one didn't quite get the treatment just because of time crunches and stuff for the show that we had put together in November.
I gotcha. Okay, I'm looking for an image. I do have this image, which was uh, the invitation for the show that we did. I'm looking for. I want to see. I thought I had it, and I'm unprepared. I'm disappointed in myself. But I want to show a final picture of the steam bug. Hold on a second. I'm just going to your Instagram. I'm hoping it's there. Is it on your Instagram somewhere?
I don't believe I posted it because it was a bit more of his thing. However, I
Gotcha.
might be able to send you some real quick.
Okay, and actually, you know where I might be able to find it would be on the NIPO art site. Wouldn't that be where I could
Yes,
find
they
it?
actually, I believe they are on there somewhere.
Hmm. Oh no, this is the same. This is where, yeah, this is where I grabbed the video from, and that's why I just kind of assumed it is. Oh, here we go. Here's the second one. Can I download this? How do I download this? Open in a new tab. All right, I've
I
got the
sent you
video.
2 pictures on our Facebook chat just now. You can find
Oh,
them there.
okay, let me grab those. I just want everybody to see how gorgeous it was. I know also in the video that we just saw, I think that was a great it was a great way to show how complex it is. Like you get the bug and it's all closed off, and you have to actually you want to explain that process while I grab these images?
Yeah, gladly. So when it comes to articulation, fortunately, larger specimens like that are quite handleable. I receive them dry, and I will put them through a very simple rehydration process. And what that does is that essentially loosens up their bodies and allows them to be movable again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that articulation is totally up to me. You could position them however you'd like. And once they dry, they'll stay in that shape. Um, so what you saw in that video was me taking it fresh out of hydration and then setting it or mounting it. Is another piece of terminology that you can use. And the pins are positioned around the specimen to keep them in shape. And then again, once they dry out, they'll stay in that sort of posture until,
Right.
pretty much however long they stick around for.
Awesome. So that is one of the steam bugs, and then you uh filled the innards with like watch gears, it looks like, or
Yes. So the articulation this was my end of the collaboration. Um, all of the sort of more conceptual parts of this project were definitely Poe's doing. I believe, as you know, he's a big model maker. He likes to tinker. He works at a lot of very small parts, and I believe his intention was to sort of mend like nature and machine because he does a lot of like robotics sort of stuff, right?
right, like
Um,
transformers.
for sure.
Yeah.
So this piece, another thing when I'm making my work, I think the way that the frame is dressed is incredibly important when it comes to presenting the specimen. Um,
Mhm.
and something that I had learned in sculpture, typically if you're creating a full 3D piece, you want materials to speak to each other. Um, so for watch gears and stuff, they're usually made out of metal and brass. I have a brass backing on this piece. It's a big chunk of metal that I did a little bit of finishing on just to sort of echo and speak to the aesthetic that has sort of been worked into the specimen.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I love the energy of this piece. I put up a couple of comments while you were talking. I don't know if you saw them, but Jilly said it was so respectful and zen watching you do your work. And
Thank
then
you.
Henlo Limbo, a new user I see out there, said the bug with all the cogs and such.
Hi,
Such a
Francis.
Oh, that's Francis. What's up, Francis?
Is
Good to
Francis.
see you. See, she tricked me. I didn't know. So there's a couple more. I don't, I don't want to keep everybody up too late, but I do want to. I mean, I love, what I was thinking about when we were looking at not that piece, this piece right here. Um,
Mhm.
the mantis that you raised for a year and that you. I mean, there's such a honorable energy here. I mean, it's like so evident to me. I know some people might find it creepy, but to me, there's such honor in this. You're honoring so many things, not only the creature but nature itself. I mean, there's so much energy in this, just the image of looking at this, and then when you actually experience these pieces in person, it's just amplified so much, to actually be in the presence of it. This is just a photo of it, and I feel that energy, so that's awesome. So we went to this one next. What is this here?
So this is a walking leaf, leaf insect, leaf bug. I have one on me, as you can see.
Nice.
I don't know if it's coming through quite
Hold on,
strongly.
let me put you up there. There you go.
There we
Yes,
go.
there we go. Beautiful.
They're
Nice.
amazing. So I really enjoy working these, not only because they're really, really fascinating. As far as camouflage goes, it doesn't really get any better than that. That's literally an animal.
It's
Um,
crazy.
and it's so cool, right?
Yeah.
So talking about, my origins with this craft, I had learned to pin insects out in Riverhead at the Long Island Aquarium. And in doing so, it was sort of kind of like a background thing that I would do because I was actually there for an internship, and I was responsible for feeding and caring for the stick bugs and leaf bugs. Um,
Wow.
and it was sort of the first time I had gained sort of access to the presence of these really interesting exotic creatures. Um, this is all pre-pinning too, which is super crazy to think about because it's been so long now. Um, but just kind of go back to connecting to these creatures and feeding them and caring for them. The amount of respect that I had gained for them just sort of like snowballed, and I was like, oh, these are so fascinating. They're really, really cool. And the amount of variety that exists for this type of insect as well. This is only one of so many different species, and they're sort of one of like the staple specimens I'll work because they're very formative for my interest in pursuing this craft. Had it not been for one of these, like,
Yeah.
who knows if my interest in bugs really would have developed the way that it did, which would lead me to where I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so, working these is always a pleasure as well. I think I have like 3 or 4 of these on display over at
That's
the
awesome.
tattoo shop right now. They're
Right.
really cool.
I love, and again, what you're saying is so evident, like the relationship that you have with your subjects, the nature, the whole aspect of honoring the thing, before you even were doing this, you had this relationship with these bugs, which is so awesome. It's great. So again, I don't want to keep people too long, but I do want to go through these. These are just also beautiful. So what can you tell us about this, like the species, the specimen, and the composition?
So these are white line sphinx moths. I also have that bottom one is also tattooed on my arm. That exact specimen is on me.
Wow.
Um, Everything that's on my arm are all specimens that I worked, and I use their photos as reference material. Um,
That's cool
it's
too.
just sort of another layer to honoring these things. And I thought that these moths were just really, really visually appealing. They're very, very different than what you would think of as a moth. A lot of people are like, oh, moths are like butterflies, but they just usually keep their wings closed. And it's a little bit more in depth than that. But this is a type of moth, a sphinx moth or a hawk moth. They're these really, really fascinating, kind of like streamlined looking creatures. And I really enjoyed the patterning on the wings, how very sort of like sharp and geometric they were. And I had two of them, and I was like, they're kind of small. They feel lost in a frame. I need to fill the space better. And then I sort of just played with a bunch of different placements and compositions, and then this came through. And it was sort of like a little bit of a eureka moment. I was like, wow, this is like super interesting. It brings my eyes all over the piece. I want to look at the entirety of both of these moths, and my eyes were dancing around the whole composition. And I remember at this time, I thought this was the most successful piece that I had made to date, because it conveyed everything that I wanted to in a piece that I make. I thought it was visually engaging. I think that the specimens really speak for the piece, but it's also this really sort of dark, very moody feel. It's visually, aesthetically, it speaks all the words that I want it to speak.
Awesome. It is definitely a beautiful piece. And I don't know what you think of this. Tell me what you think, because as I was looking at this piece, as you were talking, it brought back a memory to me when I was younger. It wasn't something that I stuck with, but I did go through a period where I was making models as well, right? They had these model kits that you would buy, and I was really into like fighter planes. And I was into the fighter planes because they were also different. Like you'd have these Japanese fighter planes versus the American fighter planes versus the English fighter planes, and they all had markings on them, and they all had different wing configurations and bodies, the fuselage. And this just totally brought that back to me. I was like, wow, these almost have that same feel, like, and
Totally.
I'm imagining that's kind of what we modeled them off of, where they somehow in some way that connects to the evolution of the plane. But
it's so funny that you say that too, because when I had made this piece, I remember my friend, he's like, wow, they look like little stealth bombers, and he was like so entranced and interested in this, that I was just like, I need to make him one now. So I made him a small single specimen piece, and he was like, oh my god.
nice.
But yeah,
It's like,
just like he hit the same conclusion that you did, which is really interesting.
like it's like a little dogfight scene or something.
Yeah,
very cool. And this was one that was on the invitation. This is also another beautiful piece, because again, here you've gone from just kind of like honoring the creature to now really honoring art in a bigger way, right? You're like honoring art theory and color theory and composition theory and everything. Beautiful.
That's totally hitting the nail on the head. This one was sort of the spiritual successor to the 3 beetle piece we had seen earlier tonight. And like you had said, this is me really trying to put my artistic abilities back into the work. Working with shadow boxes is sort of a way for me to satiate my desire to work in sculpture. However, sculpture resources are, very cumbersome and expensive, and I just don't have that ability. So working these pieces totally fits the bill. It scratches the itch. And, I was like, how can I sort of challenge myself artistically now? So sort of similarly how I had looked at the beetles, I was like, well, how can I look at shape? How can I look at form? How can things sort of speak to each other? And what can I do that will begin to set the work apart from others and really speak my vision? And I had gotten these 3 butterflies. I intended to keep them separate. I was going to make 3 separate frames with them. And at the time, I had very limited space, and I would store everything staggered on a piece of foam on a pin. And this composition kind of just like happened on its own. I was like, oh, I need to frame it. Awesome. But there's just so much. You have your different colors, you have your continuation of that strong line, though. And then you also have the negative space in between each butterfly that is also part of the piece. Yeah, I miss this piece. Every once in a while I make one. I'm just like, I don't want to get rid of it. But you know.
It's a beautiful piece. I'm sure whoever has it is super proud of it. And is this that famous moth from what's it called? Oh my goodness, the name is escaping me. That movie with the killer. Oh my God,
You
Hannibal
got
Lecter.
it.
Hannibal Lecter, right?
Silence
Silence
of
of
the
the
Lambs,
Lambs. There you go. There you go.
yeah. I've never
Nice.
seen that movie. Never
Oh
seen
no.
it.
Nice.
No. But I love the moth. I think the moth is really beautiful.
Totally awesome. Totally awesome. All right, let's go. I'm going to run through a couple of these a little
Sure.
bit quicker. What kind of the coloring? I mean, just look at the markings on this thing. It's like, oh my God, if you
Crazy.
can't see the art in nature, like, I mean, you're blind. This is phenomenal. It's so
Mhm.
beautiful. So here's some of the pinning that you were talking about. I think I also have one of a tarantula, but again, this kind of shows how much really goes into this. I mean, it's like, it's amazing what you have to do. And again, when I look at you, Adam, and I look at your artwork, it's like, it's such a natural thing. It's like, I almost feel like you were just born this way. You kind of knew what to do, and you just found it, and you're right where you're supposed to be. It's just such a great synergy watching you do what you do. This
Thank you
is
so
another
much.
more recent piece. uh Again, you started working with more specimens and composition, and you wanted to kind of achieve something different here. Was there anything specific that you were trying to achieve? By the way, when you were talking about another piece and what you were trying to achieve, I was going to say congratulations, because you blew that goal out of the water. I'm imagining the same thing here. Whatever it was you were trying to achieve is obviously a success.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've have when I had mentioned before where I'm really allowing for the specimens to inform the art. I found that success is sort of, it's not a conscious decision. I feel like I'm really channeling something.
I love that.
And that brings me back to like the idea of meditation, where I don't think it's truly meditative in terms of finding my inner workings and, kind of delving into that sort of part of my brain, but it's meditative in the way that everything else disappears and my focus sort of like really, really laser
Bam.
beams into this exact thing.
Bingo, that's it. That's what meditation is. You're just connected with the moment. You're just right
Mhm.
there, fully immersed in what it is you're doing and what is happening. And the cool thing about that moment is this is the result. you
Yeah.
have something to walk away with. It's like a prize. Which is awesome. This is a fierce looking specimen right here.
Yeah. It's another Goliath beetle related to the one that I had showed earlier, just a larger specimen.
So again, I hope this is not disrespectful in any way, but this immediately brought to my mind. I'm a big sci-fi fan. This brought Starship Troopers to mind. Is this similar to some of the bugs that they were showing in Starship Troopers?
I'm sure, they were definitely inspired by entomology. A lot of original, you'd be amazed at what sort of cinematic sort of like creatures have been inspired by just bugs alone, whether it's like that movie or The Thing or, just like really weird, wacky alien things. A lot of the times bugs are like the foundation to all that stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Ninja Kitty saying yes. So she's talking about the Starship Trooper, and the Jelly saying yes. It brings you into the present. When you're in that moment, you're in the present. I got two more here to go through. This is the tarantula. I grabbed this one off of your Instagram, and I think it was important. I missed a comment earlier. Jilly had said something about here. She said, "Interesting how our greatest fears lead us to our pathway." And I just thought that was kind of significant with this image here, and you talking about your arachnophobia. So that's cool, and you look so calm and not scared at one bit.
Oh, no. So I look really calm because this was a time lapse. When you work a tarantula, a lot of times their bodies, they want to curl. And I don't touch them. I can't bring myself to touch them, so I'll use tweezers, or I'll use chopsticks, or I'll use the pins. And every once in a while, those legs will slip and they'll curl, and I jump and I shudder, and it's not easy. It's really, really hard. You know, but what came out of this piece was so worth it.
And I don't think I have the final of that piece, but I do have the last one I have is the commission that you did for me.
Wonderful.
And Janice, and dragonflies were so significant to her. I know this is not a dragonfly. We couldn't find one, but also hearts were very important to her. And this, you did such an amazing job with this, because it was like, I didn't even know that it was exactly what I had pictured. But when I saw it, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I pictured.
Yeah, this piece was really cool. As far as like commission work goes, this was probably, I think, one of the most collaborative commissions I had ever done, because you were very good at articulating just what you were hoping to receive. And, you know, you sort of listed the elements that you wanted, but you didn't really give me too strict of a guideline. And I could tell when you got it, like, it just checked all the boxes. And for an artist who's making something for someone that, you know, the piece is intended to hold some sort of sentimental value, to see that it really did it for you guys was very, very gratifying. And you know, just like I had said before, it's a whole layer to this sort of journey of my artwork that I just didn't expect to ever have it be part of what I do. So for it to be an aspect of creating, both for myself and for other people, I'm super grateful for the support and the interest and the passion that, you know, people like you have for the things that I do.
Awesome. That was just, and I think Janice also felt the same thing when she saw it. It was immediately like, you know, it was that thing I was talking about earlier, like this collective consciousness. We were able to connect on some level. You had mentioned earlier, like, you feel like sometimes when you're working, like you're channeling, you know, it's like coming from somewhere, right? Like the universe is just kind of like telling you what to do. And that's just such an amazing feeling as an artist. I know, you know, that's an amazing, I have Andrea out there saying it's beautiful, and also saying hello, welcome. I don't really, I recognize your name. I think you were here a couple of weeks ago, but welcome back. I really appreciate people coming here and checking this show out and sharing time with me and my guest. Adam, you are so amazing to talk to. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your artwork and your existence on this planet with me. I'm so glad that you're a brother, a human, and that we get to share this stuff. If you guys like the show, what you saw, please comment below in YouTube and tell us what you thought about Adam. You know what? I didn't run this the whole time. I am so sorry. I'm going to run this now. I'm going to keep talking for like another couple of minutes so people can absorb that. But here are the places to go if you want to see more of Adam's work, if you want to commission Adam for a piece of work, which I highly recommend. He is I give him a 5-star Google rating as far as you know, having been a customer of his. And let me ask you a question. Do you have, I like to spread wisdom and give hope. Do you have any words of wisdom or hope for my audience before we sign off?
Oh man, absolutely. Just do things that really make you happy. You know, that's really what all of my artwork is about. You know, I do it from a selfish point of view, mostly just because I enjoy the hell out of it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy it. And, you know, just something as simple as that. Just take a couple minutes each day to do something that you really enjoy. For me, if I don't do those things, I find myself in a huge rut, and I'm like, man, why do I feel like I'm so off? And then I'll just like sit down in my art room and I'll start a drawing. I'll plan my next project. I'll work a couple of frames, and then I'm just immediately right back into it, and then I'm feeling all right again.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Perfect advice. I always tell people if they're looking for the answer for why are we here, what is the purpose of existence? The purpose of existence is you. Be you. Do what feels right. Do what comes from inside. Be you. That's my advice. But awesome, Adam. Thank you so much. I think I'll have to have you back one day. When you
Sure.
got another show coming up to promote or something, we'll bring you back. We'll take a look at some more videos because those are always so much fun to do. And to everybody watching, I am super excited. I was so excited for the show. I'm so happy it went so well. But I'm super excited for next week. Also, I have some really good guests coming up. Next week, I have Roger Cabler, and I met him doing a Robin Williams comedy tribute show. He did a whole show based on Robin Williams, and let me tell you, you talk about channeling. He channels the spirit of Robin Williams. There's no doubt in my mind. So much so that actually he has a movie called Being Robin, which tells his story about how he felt like he was being visited by Robin and was guided to do the show he's doing now. So that's next week. Tim, thank you so much. I appreciate you always being here from Brazil. He makes our audience international. I love that. So I will see you guys next week. And Adam, I will talk to you soon. All right.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Awesome. Peace out, everybody. Have a great night. Whoops.